room. Your body shimmers in that little black dress as you walk across the room. Now I've got nothing left to say. I've got one thing on my mind. Hi, I'm Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope. So I'm going to talk about an article that came up a few days ago, and it's regarding the Queensland Police Service here in Australia. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'll tell you because I seem to have a lot of new people have joined up for The Slippery Slope, especially on YouTube. So I was formerly a police officer. I was basically forced out of the Queensland Police Service at the end of 2022 because of the COVID-19 vaccine mandates that were brought in by the then Commissioner Katarina Carroll and her offsider Police Minister Mark Ryan. Katarina Carroll resigned her position towards the start of this year. I think it was February 22nd of February in this year. That was just around the same time, maybe just days after the mandates had been deemed unlawful in the courts. So the mandates brought in by the Queensland Police Service were deemed unlawful. Anyway, so I was a police officer. So for the last couple of years, I think I'd been just a little critical of the Queensland Police Service, its leadership, what I see as the lack of leadership within the Queensland Police Service. Now, in 2022, there was an independent commission of inquiry had been set up, and that was an inquiry into the Queensland Police Service's responses to domestic and family violence. Now, one of the issues that this commission of inquiry had identified was a lack of leadership issues within the Queensland Police Service. It also found that the Queensland Police Service had issues of misogyny and racism within its ranks, and that these were issues that the Queensland Police Service needed to address. And it made a lot of recommendations at the end of the inquiry. The main focus, like I said, was domestic and family violence, and then it branched out into racism and misogyny within the Queensland Police Service. So this is why I'm talking about this article today. So I'll bring up the headline so you can check out what I'm talking about. Queensland Police Service sacks First Nations advisory group after members refused to sign the gag clause. Now, before we go there, I'm going to go to a couple of other websites. This is talking about this is the Queensland Police Service's own website. And it's talking about the Commission of Inquiry. So it says the Commission of Inquiry into police responses to domestic and family violence, which delivered its report in November 2022, found that sexism, misogyny, and racism are a significant problem within the QPS, the Queensland Police Service, and these discriminatory behaviours impact the entire culture of the police service. One of the recommendations was that the QPS engaged the Commission to undertake a review of diversity and inclusion within the QPS. Just before we go into that, we'll also go over to the Queensland Human Rights Commission. So this is on their website, bring up what they talk about. So they have exactly the same information about the review on their website, the Commission of Inquiry into Police Response to DV and domestic and family violence. One of the recommendations was that the Queensland Police Service engaged the Queensland Human Rights Commission. So, and on the next page, it says, in July of 2023, we began a review to increase diversity and inclusion within the Queensland Police Service. The focus of the review is the recruitment and retention of women, First Nations, and culturally diverse police. Okay, so looking at the recommendations, this page here is showing us the recommendations of the inquiry. This is the inquiry into domestic violence, also misogyny and racism within the Queensland Police Service. So, recommendation 42. Within 12 months, the Queensland Police Service establish a First Nations panel incorporating representative community members to assess and advise on its cultural capability training and report to the Assistant Commissioner, People Capability Command. Recommendation 43, within 12 months, the Queensland Police Service consult with First Nations people and communities in every police district to obtain permission to use an alternative space to interview witnesses. That's a little, I don't know how you're going to realise that within the state, but anyway. It's a bit of a pipe dream, that one, I think. Within 6 months, the Queensland Police Service established an additional complaint code to explicitly capture complaints involving allegations of racism. Yeah, that'd be good. Within 3 months, is recommendation 45. The Queensland Police Service elevate the role of the First Nations reference group by requiring that the group be co-chaired by a member of the Queensland Police Service and one of the community members of the group. Members of the group report any issues identified by or are reported to them to the group at each meeting. The group discuss those issues and make recommendations about matters the Queensland Police Service should consider in order to enhance police responses to First Nations peoples and communities, including in relation to domestic and family violence in Queensland. The Queensland Police Service member report on those recommendations and any actions taken to the executive leadership team. The Queensland Police Service member advised the group at the next meeting any discussions of the executive leadership team made supporting the recommendations and actions. The term of reference for the group be confirmed, an initial action plan be advised. Within 12 months, recommendation 46, within 12 months, the Queensland Police Service separate the First Nations and Multicultural Affairs units into 2 districts and standalone units. Anyway, so these are, it has a couple more there, but these are the main recommendations there. So let's get back to this article. Queensland Police Service sacks First Nations advisory group after members refuse to sign the gag order. Part of the inquiry, the recommendations on the findings made at the inquiry was that the Queensland Police Service have issues with leadership, but they don't want to change. QPS said the body comprising elders and community leaders was not meeting the purpose and original intent of the group. There he is there, new Commissioner Steve Golszewski. The Queensland Police Service has sacked a formal advisory group of First Nations community leaders and elders 6 weeks after they refused to sign a gag clause that they say could have silenced ongoing criticism. Now, listen, as a former police officer working within the Covert and Special Operations Group, Counterterrorism and Special Operations Group, you understand, okay, there's that need for silence. There's a need for secrecy in some ways. I've got to say, I don't understand why they would have these gag clauses within an advisory group. Because, and this is one of the main problems I find within QPS in general, there's always this desire for secrecy and not understanding. It seems to be a lack of understanding that there's times when you need absolute transparency. It's actually better for them. It would be better for them, I think, if they had a lot more transparency within the organization. And I think this is part of the problem why we ended up with this huge inquiry and so many issues, why it branched into misogyny and racism. Part of that was brought about because of the lack of transparency that's been within the Queensland Police Service for so many years. Anyway, get back to this. So why do they need these gag clauses? So members of the First Nation Advisory Group have publicly and privately raised concerns that the police leadership had stalled on cultural reform promised in the aftermath of the 2022 inquiry. The group led calls for the resignation of the police union president, Ian Levers. Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad thing for him to go. I'll tell you, he's been in that position way too long. Over a widely criticised October opinion piece on the state's proposed path to treaty that they condemned as racialised and divisive, containing factually inaccurate comments, including that a state treaty would result in the justice system favouring First Nations people. Now, I'll tell you straight up, while I am for this advisory group, I think, the inquiry made these recommendations, and I think that they should be adhered to. I think they should be pursuing this as best as they can. And I'm in favor of this advisory group. I am not for treaty. I'm not for state treaty. I'm very much against it. And I've yet to hear any good arguments, any rational arguments that would be supporting state treaty at all. I haven't heard anything. Okay, so I'm not pro state treaty, federal treaty, any kind of treaty at all, to be honest. So that's just where I stand on that. So just in case you're thinking, well, yeah, this is, that I'm just trying to support treaty or something like that. So that's what they're all about. I would not be supporting. I'm not pro treaty. Anyway, so in 2022, members of the group accused Steve Golshuski, who is now the commissioner, of becoming angry and aggressive during a meeting with them, pointing his finger at a senior elder and saying, "You people don't run the organization." Now, me personally, I wouldn't get that offended about it, but I was a police officer. Okay, that's yeah. So, and I get why some people get a bit offended and say, "Okay, well, these are just members of the public in reality, and should you be talking to people like that?" Anyway, if you that seems to be what Steve Golshuski is all about. But anyway, so the group was notified of their sacking on the 29th of February. This is in 2024, the day of former Commissioner Katarina Carroll's farewell, funny enough, after Golshuski had been named as the acting commissioner. Now, remember, the inquiry had made recommendations about the leadership within the Queensland Police Service. Funny, we haven't really seen many changes. I don't know of any changes, any significant changes surrounding the Queensland Police Service leadership and the executive leadership team. I don't know of any significant changes whatsoever. And then the very first thing that he does, it seems, is he notifies them of their sacking as soon as he comes in. Golshuski comes in. In a detailed statement, the group says that on 16th of January, members were given contracts to sign containing confidentiality clauses. These clauses would prevent us from speaking publicly about the work of the group and were contrary to the group's terms of reference, the statement says. 2 weeks later, the group met the new director of the Police First Nations Division and raised concern about a number of matters, including stalled progress on implementing the inquiry's recommendations. Why do you have stalled progress? This is the recommendation. Shouldn't you be? I mean, I would have thought some of these things, especially to with First Nations people within Queensland, would have been the easiest things to set up. Some of the domestic and family violence recommendations would have been very hard. But there's already so much infrastructure. There's already these groups set up within Queensland. I would have thought it would have been easier. These would have been the things that, yep, okay, we can set those up, keep them in place, get them out of the way so we can focus on the other things. We've got them in place and start working. Anyway, where is it? I'll go back. First Nations Division raised concerns about a number of matters, including stalled progress. Anyway, let's go on. They have released a statement after attempting to raise concerns with the Premier, Stephen Miles. They say these efforts were met with silence. We're obliged to act with open transparency about the workings of the First Nations Advisory Group. And that's good for everyone if there's transparency. Transparency clears the way, clears doubt in people's minds that they are getting, they are getting value for money when it comes to these kinds of groups. Um, and we are obliged to advocate in the interests of justice for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, the statement read. The actions of the QPS have left us with little faith in the newly established First Nations division to be effective, or the senior leadership of the QPS to work in partnership with our First Nations communities. We are concerned that the QPS will now actively seek to recruit a token advisory group. Oh, crikey. Who would have ever thought the QPS would put together a token group? Anyone that knows anything about QPS. Until drastic action is taken to address the culture that exists within the QPS, we hold great concern that any action taken by QPS will be tokenistic, performative, and for the purposes of optics to mislead our community. After taking concerns about Lever's comments to Carroll, the group says the former commissioner agreed to undertake a racism audit of the QPS. Asked on Monday whether it had begun any racism audit or if it intended to honour the commitment, the QPS did not address the question. In a statement, the QPS said it had conducted an internal assessment of the advisory group beginning in December that identified that the group in its previous iteration was not meeting the purpose and original intent of the group. With that advice in mind, the executive director of the QPS's First Nation division decided to release the group members at the time and encourage those members to apply through a transparent recruitment process. In other words, a process that will make sure that they get the people that they want. Little yes men, so that they have their tokenistic group set in place. The QPS The QPS aims to recruit members with the view of reflecting the diverse groups that make up our First Nations community. Reference group members reject suggestions they were not fulfilling their objectives under the co-design term of reference. They say they were not included in any review. Similar suggestions that the group were not representative made by senior police during the inquiry in 2022 were rejected at the time by members as a smokescreen to attempts to silence them. A former member of the group, academic Marlene Longbottom, raised concerns in 2022 that the QPS wanted to replace members agitating for reform with more palatable blacks. That's what she says, quoting her. She says, quote Longbottom here, they want blackfellas who are not going to push the envelope, who are not going to call out the violence, she said. Longbottom resigned last year, stating meetings were hostile and that she has no interest in working with police ever again. If the Queensland Police Service and this new commissioner cannot even implement a First Nations advisory group as recommended by the inquiry from 2022, and if it can't even do that, how can the public within Queensland have faith in the executive leadership team of the Queensland Police Service? How can we have confidence that Steve Golshuski is the right person for the job? How can we have confidence in the leadership team if there's no meaningful and significant change within the leadership team? All I see from the Queensland Police Service is brushing over issues, covering up issues, never really making changes because we don't want to. We've all got our friends within the executive leadership branch, and we've all got everyone vying for different roles, and they don't want. The issue is the leadership team don't want to implement the changes because it'll affect them. So all they're trying to do, in my opinion, is bring about a First Nations advisory group that suits the executive leadership within the Queensland Police Service. So we're not going to see the changes that Queenslanders need, and we're not going to see the changes that the inquiry said we needed. We're just going to have more of the same. And even though I don't agree at all with state treaty and some of the things that the that the advisory group were looking at. You need to face criticism and come up with answers. You can't just silence people with gag clauses in contracts all the time. You need to face up and say, well, this is the issue, and provide significant answers for the hard questions. And say, okay, well, we don't all agree, but this is our answer to your question. This is our answer to your proposal. We're not just going to silence you. We're not just going to provide gag clauses within your contracts. We're going to provide proper answers and open transparency so everyone can see that we are implementing significant change within the organization. But we're not going to see significant change within the organization. We're not going to see things progressing for the better when they can't even implement a First Nations advisory group properly. How are they going to implement any of the other recommendations made by the 2022 inquiry? They can't even do this. That's my opinion. We've just got, with Gulshuski and the leadership team we have in the Queensland Police Service, we've just got more of the same. There's no real change. That's my opinion. I'm Jay Fallon. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher. I'm on fire because nothing's going